The laugh in the counseling room broke something inside me. I sat there with my hands folded, feeling the floor tilt. The counselor had asked one simple thing. Nath had to stop seeing other women if we were going to save our family. Nath leaned back, his jaw loose, and laughed. It was a bright, casual sound like a man who had nothing to lose. He said, "She worries too much. I'll be fine." The words landed like stones. I tried to breathe. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I reached for Nath's phone to steady my hands. I meant to touch it and put it down, but the lock screen flashed a new message from an unknown contact. A preview showed a flirty line and an emoji that made my stomach drop. For a second I thought it was a mistake. I wanted to believe in the life we built for 10 years. I wanted to trust him. He watched me, smirked, and said it was nothing. The counselor stared at him, then at me. I kept my voice small. I told him I would trust him if he stopped. He smiled like it was a joke. That laugh echoed in my head long after we left the room. At home I kept seeing the preview on his phone. It would not leave me alone. At home I tried to be calm. I asked Nath about the message. He tilted his head and said the texts were nothing, just work jokes, he said. The way he said it made me feel like I was bothering him. Then he did something small but terrible. He wiped his phone. He swiped too fast with a practice charm. Felt like a trick. After he left for a meeting, I followed the small thread of doubt. I moved through our room like a careful thief, looking for anything that might not belong to me. In the trash can under coffee filters and an old receipt, I found a small hotel keycard. It had a tiny logo and a date stamp. It was the sort of thing a person would toss without thinking, except not everyone has a reason to be 2 blocks from our daughter's school at night. My hand shook when I read the letters. E. Bennett penciled on the registration slip. I felt the floor tilt again. I wanted to call him right then and shout until my voice broke. Instead I put the keycard in my pocket and walked to the kitchen. On the counter, our daughter left a drawing of our family. I looked at it and felt like the parent in that picture was a stranger. That night I stayed awake, listening for his key. When he came home, he smelled faintly of someone else's perfume. He kissed my cheek without apology. I kept the keycard tucked in my sock, like proof of a secret life. A tagged photo showed up on a public feed and felt like a slap. Nath stood close to a woman at a gallery opening. Her name was Lena. She smiled with her head tipped toward him, like they were sharing an inside joke. My stomach dropped. Lena worked in the same building as Nath's firm, or so a casual co-worker tag suggested. The world tightened around me. I did not tell anyone yet. I watched and saved that post. I watched for patterns. The more I looked, the more I saw tiny signs. Coffee shop comments between Nath and someone with that name. A shared emoji and a string of office chatter. I told myself to slow down. I did not want to be the woman who fell apart on rumor. I wanted facts. Then my phone buzzed with an anonymous text. The message had no name and read, "You should look at their calendar." My breath caught. Who was watching Nath so closely that they would warn me? Who would dig through his schedule? For once, curiosity felt dangerous. I opened his online calendar and scrolled. There were late blocks labeled meeting. There were nights with blank spots where he said he would be home. At 5 a.m. I saved screenshots of a meeting, at a date that matched the hotel keycard. My hands shook, but something in me calmed. I was no longer waiting for proof. I was gathering it. I moved slowly and quiet like a good spy in my own life. I took screenshots, made notes, and saved small receipts I found on counters. I kept a folder on my laptop labeled only me. Each file made me feel steadier. Nath changed patterns. He started using odd burner numbers for calls. He said they were work. He began taking late-night work calls in the car. I learned to read the way he left the room. One receipt surprised me. It was for a boutique hotel breakfast, 2 blocks from our daughter's school. The date matched a canceled school pickup where he claimed he was in a meeting. When I traced the payment, it matched a corporate card. My throat tightened. Why was his company paying for breakfast at a tiny hotel 2 blocks from the school? My mind filled with questions. I took pictures of receipts and emails and filed them. I felt like I was building a small wall to protect myself. I started to notice other little things. A lipstick on a sleeve, a hair I did not recognize, fresh perfume that was not mine. I kept proving to myself that I was not imagining things. Each tiny scrap was a voice that said, "This is happening." At the same time, I felt a mean sort of relief. The truth can be a terrible bomb. I could finally stop wondering. A plain envelope landed on the doormat one afternoon. No stamp, no return name. Just my address in careful handwriting. Inside was a short video clip on a tiny flash drive. The clip showed Nath leaving the boutique hotel with Lena on a rainy night. They walked close, laughing, then hugged. The moment cut off neatly like someone had edited the end. My hands trembled as I watched. The clip was short but enough. It contradicted everything Nath had said. It was proof. Someone knew. I felt a cold hand at the back of my neck. The person who had sent it wanted me to find it. The envelope's return address was a P.O. box. The name attached to the box sounded oddly familiar. I held the flash drive and thought of the counselor's room. I thought of Nath's laugh. The video made the laugh a wound with fresh salt. I wanted to shout at him. I wanted to confront him in the middle of our kitchen. I folded the flash drive into a napkin and took it to the bin. As I lifted the lid, the phone rang. An unknown voice said only, "Stop digging." Then the line went dead. I froze with the lid in my hand. Someone was watching me. They were close enough to warn me. I felt both fear and a strange pride. Fear that someone might hurt me. Pride because someone cared enough to send proof. The voicemail haunted me. That night my car was keyed while it sat in the driveway. A small note on the windshield read, "Mind your own business." The handwriting was blocky, the kind you see in warning letters. The anger in me warmed like hot coals. Someone thought they could scare me into silence. But fear sharpened my plan. Fear is a tool if you keep it small. I remembered a receipt an old friend had texted me. Nath's corporate card charged at that boutique hotel the week before. A tiny string of numbers showed up on a midnight bank alert. $6,000 to a vendor with no clear name. My head swam. I did not tell our daughter. I pretended everything was normal at breakfast. I smiled and tied her hair into two neat pigtails. But at midday I walked into a small private office and hired help. I used my own savings and an alias. The private investigator was quiet and efficient. He listened, then nodded like he had seen this before. He promised to be discreet. He said he could track check-ins, flights, and vendor payments. I felt foolish and fierce at the same time. I had been a home builder in small steps for 10 years. This felt like tearing the house open and looking in the crawl space. I had to know. I would not be pushed out by a laugh. The PI worked fast and quiet. Within days, he produced a list of hotel check-ins and flights under coded names. He found strange vendor payments from a consulting account to a tiny events company, with Lena's name tied to it. The invoices were clean and marked as business dinners. The pattern worried me. Personal dinners labeled as consulting fees. I felt both clever and scared. I forwarded as many files as I could to a folder only I could open. Each document was a small match in a room that might burn. I did not tell Nath. I did not tell my parents. I kept it locked in my drawer and carried on with school drop-offs and client sketches. Then the world turned fast. I opened the mailbox to find a court document. Nath had filed for a temporary restraining order against me. The papers accused me of harassment and stalking. They told me to keep distance. The words felt like a glove fitting over my hand, too tight and meant to silence. I read the pages twice. My lawyer would later say it was a classic countermove. Nath tried to paint me as the problem. The police left a polite card. I folded the papers and put them in my Only Me folder. I would not be the woman who panicked first. Courtroom air is thin and loud. Nath's lawyer painted me as unstable. They showed a short slice of the hotel footage as proof of obsession. The judge listened and signed temporary orders that pulled access from my hands. No joint account usage, limited contact, and Nath was named temporary primary custodian for our daughter. I left the courthouse feeling like I had been step by step erased. On the courthouse steps, my hands were cold and empty. My private investigator had slipped a small folder into my bag before we left. He said it might help. I opened it under a bench. Inside was an internal email from Nath's firm. It had a line that made my chest lurch. He had CC'd his assistant on a personal dinner reimbursement. The assistant forwarded it to a vendor payments inbox. I did not understand how such an ordinary line could matter. The PI explained. It meant corporate money might have paid for personal dinners. The timing matched a few of my receipts. For the first time I felt the gears turning. This was not only betrayal at home. This might be theft in the office. But the next morning the vendor payments inbox was offline. It was like digging in sand and finding your tracks wiped away. Someone was trying to hide what they did. I felt small and very angry. The email had a tiny thread that mattered. Nath's assistant forwarded a receipt to a vendor payments address, and the email chain showed approvals. The PI tracked it to a payments server that went offline overnight. I realized how carefully someone tried to erase their footprints. I sat in my office and reread the emails until the words blurred. There were mentions of dinner with LC, and expense to be coded as consulting. The firm had a neat policy manual. None of this fit the rules. If company funds paid for personal services, it could be fraud. My hands shook as I printed pages. I sent a short, careful note to a lawyer I chose, a woman who once represented a whistleblower. I wrote, I have emails showing misuse of corporate funds. I have a private investigator. The lawyer's reply came in an hour. Meet me. The idea of dragging a corporate giant into the open felt both terrifying and freeing. I thought of all the late nights I had worked in this house building a life. I thought of our daughter's small head on my shoulder. I would not let that smile be used as a prop. Nath seemed to sense danger. He changed passwords, shifted calendars, and acted like nothing was wrong. He wore a calm face at the table and parsed the news with detached interest. At night he left the house for work calls and shut the door. I noticed he was careful. He erased messages and shifted documents like a man cleaning fingerprints. But people are sloppy. My PI found a cloud backup file Nath assumed no one used. It was a folder named Discretion. Inside were scanned receipts, calendar notes, and a list of names. The folder had a company title that belonged to a shell LLC. When the PI traced the LLC, it led to a small condo listed under that company's name. I drove to that condo address in a fog of nerves. The building was small and neat. The address matched. The condo was 2 blocks from Nath's office. My hands passed over the mailbox slot like a thief afraid of all sound. I had proof the shell company owned property. I could hardly breathe. Back home I kept my voice steady for our daughter. I made pancakes and smiled while a tiny hard thing in me planned the next move. I would not be walked out of my life with a laugh. I saw Lena at a public event. She was luminous in a simple dress, surrounded by friends and table chatter. I decided to approach her like a stranger. My heart thudded and my hand felt steady. I said, "Nice evening, isn't it?" She smiled small, polite and cool. I kept my voice soft, friendly. She slipped. She called Nath by a pet name in public, just a flicker, and then hid it quickly. I watched her face. There was a panic that showed for a heartbeat. I asked about her business. She said she ran small events. I kept my tone light. She offered a thin laugh and moved away. Before she left, Lena pressed a business card into my palm. It looked ordinary but was coffee-stained. She apologized for the stain and said she had to go. Her fingers brushed mine for a second. I memorized the name on the card and the shaky font. Later, in the quiet of my kitchen, I looked at the card and the company name. It matched some invoices the PI had found. The pattern fit together like a map. I felt a cold clarity. She was not untouchable. She was part of the trail that led to a condo and a shell company. The life we made was not as private as Nath thought. The business card led to bank records. The PI fed me numbers and dates like lit match papers. The small LLC showed frequent deposits from Nath's corporate card. The money moved in small, tidy amounts, labeled as consulting or event fees. It looked like a system made to hide real payments. I sent the list to my lawyer. She read it slowly, lips pressed. She said the pattern suggested personal expenses routed through corporate lines. That can be fraud. She said subpoenas could pull the records. Word reached the firm in a slow leak. A ticker tape headline jumped into my phone. Local CFO under boardroom review. The board had noticed an odd pattern on their own. The whole house of cards might tremble. I felt the balance shift. Nath began to seem less like a man with charm, and more like a person who had placed bets he could control. He had made moves to cover his trail, but the map of receipts and deposits started to show a clear route. I breathed a little easier. The fight was no longer only mine. It had a stage. The board at Nath's firm started a quiet review. Someone high up had used the hotline to report suspicious spending. The firm froze accounts for a few senior people. Nath walked into our kitchen the night I found the headlines with a face that tried to be surprised. He slammed a glass into the sink when he thought I was not looking. After a while he went quiet. I watched him read a message on his phone and flinch. The next morning he came to me with a soft voice and a stranger's sadness. He said they were investigating. He asked me to be careful. But Nath did not look like a man who wanted to be careful. He filed an emergency counterattack. Public statements that I had been acting irrationally, and that I had taken company resources. He tried to brand me as the aggressor. I felt the ground move under my feet. My lawyer, steady and sharp, said this was their playbook. They would try to make me the story, not the misuse of funds. At night, I sat maintaining my Only Me folder and feeling both rage and fear. The firm's freeze might be the crack I needed. Their silence might break them. My lawyer found a pattern the board could not ignore. She subpoenaed vendor records and bank statements. The line items showed dinners coded as consulting fees, transfers to the small LLC, and then payments to Lena's events business. It was neat proof. She said the firm would have to produce the records. In response, Nath's lawyers attacked. They accused me of reckless spending and tried to smear my reputation. They said I had used family funds for personal projects and had been irresponsible. It felt like a hand on my throat. I let my lawyer do her job. She revealed how I had paid household bills, daycare, and kept the home functioning while Nath spent company funds on personal luxuries. The courtroom murmured. She painted a picture of two lives. One public and bright for Nath, and one private and steady for me. At night I sat with our daughter and read her a story. I kissed her forehead and felt the harsh warmth of determination. I would not let them buy me quiet with lies. I wanted the truth out, but I wanted it in a way that would let my daughter sleep safely. Nath's team brought witnesses and a hired investigator, who testified that I was unstable and obsessive. They showed doctored photos that suggested erratic behavior. I felt the world tilt again. My lawyer then stood and asked for account records and a forensic audit. When the forensic accountant started to speak, the courtroom bent forward. He had months of bank pulls, timestamps, and cross-reference calendars. He laid out how corporate funds had been moved and coded. He showed that payments to the LLC matched dates of Lena's events and the boutique hotel bookings. A hush fell over the room. Nath's face changed. He was not comfortable like he had been in counseling. The judge ordered an independent forensic review. For the first time in months I felt the air shift away from me and toward the evidence. Outside the courthouse, strangers stopped me and offered quiet thumbs up. Inside, Nath's confident posture stuttered. The paperwork was heavy and slow, but it favored the truth. My lawyer said softly, "We can get the records, Maya. We can make them show the trail." I breathed, and for once the breath felt like power. A month later my PI called with a single line. "I have a drive." He handed me a small flash drive and told me to keep it sealed. Inside were 3 years of expense reports, calendar notes, and scanned receipts. There was a wire transfer trail connecting Nath to the boutique condo under the LLC's name. There were copies of corporate checks used for supposed consulting fees that paid personal costs. I locked the drive in a safe and took it to my lawyer. Her eyes widened as she skimmed. She said the documents were smoking. She warned me to be careful and said we would bring them to court in a controlled way. That night I felt both terrified and certain. Then a text came from Nath. "If this goes public, you will lose everything." The message was meant to scare. It did not. I read it and felt a steady heat in my chest. He thought he had power. He thought that threat could stop me. I slept little that night. I thought of the life we had built, the small things I did for my daughter, and the quiet design studio I always meant to start. I thought of one small line from the counselor's notebook. "Stop seeing other women." He had laughed at that once. Now he had a different reason to fear me. We took the drive into court. The auditors testified and the firm announced cooperation. The board said it would review all records and suggested notifying regulators. Nath's calm face frayed. He called frantic late-night meetings with his lender. My lawyer found that he had changed beneficiaries and shifted assets. I learned about an insurance switch that made me sit very still. Nath had moved portions of a life policy and small investments into an account in his mother's name. The financial advisor testified that he had helped Nath in a move he called precaution. The timeline was tight. The moves happened right after the counselor session. On the stand, the advisor let slip a phrase he did not mean to say. He remembered Nath boasting, "She'll never figure it out." The courtroom buzzed. The phrase made a small sound like a crack. Nath's smug smile flickered. My lawyer leaned close and whispered that the advisor's comment was gold. I felt the room tilt the other way. The truth was not a single blow. It was a slow, patient build. There was a private recording the PI had obtained. It was not a dramatic tape. It was Nath joking about me, saying, "Tell her to worry, she's dramatic, I've got it all locked down." The admissibility was contested, but the judge heard about it. The words painted an ugly picture. The public reacted. News cameras started to show up at the courthouse. People talked about cheating and corporate theft on their lunch breaks. Nath filed for full custody as a move to pressure me. I could feel the situation sharpening into a weapon. My lawyer gathered school records, teacher statements, and neighbor testimonies. She showed how I had been my daughter's steady hand. Morning lunches, doctor visits, school plays. She exposed Nath's absence at family events and noted times other women were spotted with him at company outings. One small night I sat with our daughter while she slept and I thought about courage. The courage to stay steady. The courage to gather evidence. The courage to be the parent who keeps smiling when life is loud and ugly. I closed my eyes and promised the small body beside me that I would not let her life be torn to shreds. Under pressure and a legal subpoena, Lena cracked. She agreed to a sealed deposition. I waited, hands folded, for the lawyers to tell me what she had said. In the sealed room, she admitted Nath had promised to leave his family. She said the LLC had been a retainer for her services. Lena handed over emails and a voice note in which Nath had mocked his plan. Her testimony was delicate but sharp. She described nights paid as consulting, dinners labeled as meetings, and a condo that Nath had asked her to hold. She said he wanted to make sure there was a backup plan, something for them. The words made my stomach lurch and then harden. After the deposition, the court ordered an asset freeze. The boutique condo was suddenly in the middle of a legal tug. Nath's public moves sounded smaller when a judge placed restraints on what he could touch. I felt the scales tip. It was not all victory, but it felt like justice had a slow heartbeat and we were listening closely. Nath's lawyers offered a settlement. They wanted silence. Sign this non-disclosure and a lump sum and walk away. The numbers were shiny in a glossy envelope. They wanted a gag clause that would shield Nath and protect his character. I opened the envelope in my kitchen and felt a wash of disgust. The lawyer's words were careful. You will be compensated if you accept. You will sign away the right to speak on these matters. My hands tightened around the paper. They tried to buy my quiet. I thought of Lena and the shell company and the way my daughter would be taught a lesson in shame. On the back of the envelope there was a canceled check with Nath's signature and a scribbled note. Think quickly. He thought money could silence me. He thought it would erase what he had done. My lawyer said taking the offer would protect him and let him move on. Saying no would mean trial. Saying no would be loud. I folded the paper and set it aside. I would not be made small by a check. Trial day felt like a theater. The courtroom was packed with friends, media, and faces I recognized from work. The forensic accountants came with charts and colored lines. Lena's deposition sat like a small, sharp stone on the evidence table. Nath walked in with a suit and a quiet, furious face. The accountants mapped the money. They showed that corporate funds went to an LLC which paid for the boutique condo and regular retainer fees for Lena. Cross-referenced calendars matched dates of hotel check-ins and nights he had not told us about. Nath's defense frayed under the weight of numbers. For my part, I read one line from the counselor's notes into the record. The day he laughed and said I worried too much. The courtroom listened. Nath's composure broke while cameras clicked. He looked small and brittle. I felt a weird hush of cold triumph. This was not a revenge show. It was a measured truth. The judge closed his eyes and began to write. The breath in the courtroom stopped. I sat with my hands folded and felt my life, messy and honest, shine in the dim brightness of that room. The judge's words were careful and precise. He found that assets linked to personal enrichment and corporate misappropriation belonged to the marital estate. He ordered the boutique condo voided and returned. He required Nath to pay legal fees and a large spousal support. Custody tilted toward me. The firm was ordered to correct records and pursue internal restitution. When the ruling came, Nath's face turned the color of old paper. He filed an immediate notice of appeal, his lawyers quick like shadows. I felt a rush of relief cut with new worry. The legal world does not end with one judge. It only slows for a moment. Outside the courthouse, people whispered. Friends hugged me. My phone buzzed with messages. The words felt like warmth. Nath left with a white face and a thin goodbye that tried not to sound like a threat. I watched him go. For a second I thought about confronting him, screaming until he understood every small wound. Instead I walked to a coffee shop and ordered a plain black coffee. I sat in a corner and let the day settle like calm dust. My daughter's school would come first. My studio plans would come next. I had the ruling in my hand. Felt like a map. The appeal was almost expected. It was a legal move meant to stall. But more documents surfaced. Former coworkers came forward. A note here, a copy of a check there. The pattern grew and Nath's job evaporated. The firm could not keep a man in that position after public records showed how neat the trail had been. Nath's public image crumbled. He left the firm under the weight of scandal. The press painted him in darker colors each day. He lost clients he had once wooed with quiet charm. Money ran out faster than he had planned. His mother returned the investment accounts under pressure. The appeal went quiet. I used the settlement money not for revenge but for firm ground. I opened an independent design studio and hired a small team. I wanted to make something steady and beautiful. I wanted work that fed me and did not need applause. Slowly, people who respected craft found me. The last legal thread frayed when the appeals court declined to hear Nath's case. The judge's earlier ruling stood. He had to pay restitution. He had to face the truth. For months we had moved like dancers around a fire. Now the flames cooled. Months later Lena spoke publicly about the retainer and the condo. She spoke with simple honesty. She did not shout or accuse. She laid out the truth she knew. People listened. The firm continued its internal fixes. It launched a series of policies to stop personal expense misuse. I kept my profile low. My daughter and I moved into a bright rental with a small studio space. I posted a photo once. Sunlight on a table, sketches spread out, my daughter drawing beside me. The caption read nothing dramatic, only a note about a new start. It went viral not for scandal but for quiet dignity. The public liked the image of a woman who rebuilt her life and did not lash out. That suited me. I did not want trophies for suffering. I wanted work and warmth. Nath's world, once polished and untouchable, was now small and brittle. He texted me once, "You win." I saw the message for 1 second and deleted it without reading. The deletion felt final. I did not dance on his ruin. I simply kept stepping forward, building rooms in color and small comforts. My daughter played and I designed. That was enough. Freedom was not dramatic. It was a slow, steady thing. I woke up and made coffee, and my hands knew the pattern of the cup. My studio filled with clients and quiet praise. I hired a small administrator and a junior designer. We worked on a shelter for mothers, a project I had always wanted to do. The settlement helped, but the real change was the way people trusted me again. Nath's appeals sputtered out and more documents surfaced that painted him poorly in private. He struggled to find work that matched his old title. His image remained tarnished. Lena found a new life away from the headlines and started her own small events business without the retainer she had been promised. She paid back what she had been given and started fresh. One evening I sat on my studio floor with paint on my hands and my daughter asleep in the next room. A final text from Nath arrived. A short line, "You win." I tapped delete and felt no heat in my chest. I had the last laugh in a courtroom that wrote the truth into the records, but the real prize was quiet. A life that did not need to hide. I rose and walked to the window. The city lights shimmered like a promise.